Welcome to the second part of our series. Who has legitimate claim over the land of Canaan? The ancestral claim is based on genetic heritage. For this, we will examine genetic studies that explore connections between ancient populations and present-day people. According to genetic analyses, the ancient Canaanites were descendants of earlier populations inhabiting the Levant region, including indigenous hunter-gatherers and early agricultural communities. Dating back to the Bronze Age period, which spans approximately from around 3,300 BC to 1,200 BC, the lack of a clear ancient Israelite ancestry may stem from various hypotheses or potential reasons. One explanation may be that the ancient Israelite society underwent significant demographic changes over time, including migrations, conquests, and assimilation of diverse populations. These population movements likely led to the dilution or blending of any distinct genetic signature that could have characterized the ancient Israelites. Another possible explanation is a continuous gene flow and admixture between the Canaanites and ancient Israelites, which would have blended their genetic lineages. Over time, the distinct genetic markers that might have identified the Israelites could have become absorbed and indistinguishable within the larger Canaanite population. Philistines also appeared in the region of Canaan from approximately 1,200 BC, but they have a different origin. Researchers have extracted DNA from the remains of 10 individuals, including 4 infants, who were buried at Ashkelon during the Bronze Age and Iron Age. The results, which were published in the journal Science Advances, suggest the Philistines indeed migrated to the Middle East from southern Europe, unrelated to the indigenous peoples of Canaan. Given the lack of clear evidence for distinct ancient Israelite genetic markers, our focus shifts to Canaanite genetic heritage as the well-established indigenous root of the land. Accordingly, we will explore the genetic connections of Jews to Canaanite lineage to ascertain their genetic affinity with this region. Furthermore, as Philistine DNA does not trace back to the indigenous origins of Canaan, and considering the genetic divergence between modern Palestinians and ancient Philistines, we will also investigate the genetic relationship between Palestinians and the ancestral Canaanite population to gain insights into their genetic ties to this region. Both Jews and Palestinians share genetic ancestry related to the ancient Canaanites, comprising one of their 2 largest ancestral components, indicating shared roots linked to the indigenous populations of the region. However, the differentiation in their other genetic components reflects distinct historical migrations and interactions. Regarding Jews, the second primary ancestral component is from European origins, likely influenced by later historical migrations and interactions with European populations, particularly among Ashkenazi Jews who settled in Central and Eastern Europe. On the other hand, the other primary ancestral component of Palestinian ancestry clusters genetically close to Bedouins, Jordanians, and Saudi Arabians, which was described as consistent with a common origin in the Arabian Peninsula. For this specific topic, we will also consider another modern population, the Lebanese. Several studies on the Lebanese population indicate their Canaanite origins. According to one specific study in the American Journal of Human Genetics, today's Lebanese share a whopping 93% of their DNA with ancient Canaanites. In this last segment, we will explore a concise overview of the historical dimensions related to territorial sovereignty, recognition, and treaties and agreements concerning the land. We aim to establish a foundational understanding of the legitimacy of the legal claim. During the age of nationalism, which spanned the 19th and early 20th centuries, most of the countries we know today were formed. This period was characterized by the emergence of national consciousness, which motivated populations to unify fragmented territories and strive for independence from empires. National consciousness is rooted in shared language, culture, ethnicity, and historical presence. During the age of nationalism, the criteria for statehood was generally understood and accepted by the international community. These criteria were later codified and formalized into a single international agreement by the Montevideo Convention in 1933, which outlined the criteria for statehood. This included a permanent population, defined territory, government, and capacity to enter into relations with other states. This convention helped establish the framework for recognizing newly formed nations. The identity of the majority group within a land often dominates the nationalist narrative and the creation of a nationalistic identity. The majority group's ethnicity, language, culture, and religion typically form the basis for the nation-building process, with the nationalist movement centered around these dominant characteristics. The right of a minority group to seek independence within a region is grounded in principles of self-determination, human rights, and democratic governance. This right may be justified by factors such as denial of self-governance, marginalization, discrimination, violations of human rights, and democratic deficits within the existing majority population's framework. The determination of the territorial boundaries of a state established by a minority would ideally be based on factors such as historical borders, demographic distribution, and geographical considerations. However, the creation of a separate state by a minority group may not always be feasible or desirable. In many cases, the focus may be on protecting the rights and interests of minority groups within the framework of a single state, alternatively gaining the right to self-governance within a smaller area of the region. This type of arrangement is referred to as autonomy or self-rule. During World War I, the British government made conflicting promises to both the Arabs and Jews regarding the future of Israel or Palestine. In the McMahon-Hussein Correspondence 1915, the British promised the Arabs independence in exchange for their support in the war against the Ottoman Empire, which controlled Palestine at the time. However, in the Balfour Declaration 1917, the British government expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, without prejudicing the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities. These conflicting promises contributed to tensions between the Arab and Jewish populations in Palestine and laid the groundwork for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The cataclysmic events of World War II and the Holocaust precipitated a seismic shift in Jewish immigration patterns. The horrors of Nazi persecution and the extermination of 6 million Jews prompted a massive influx of Jewish refugees to Palestine, seeking sanctuary and security. This influx, coupled with international sympathy for the Jewish plight and geopolitical developments, significantly accelerated the growth of the Jewish population in Palestine. The identification of Arabs with the term Palestinians significantly intensified during the British Mandate period from 1920 to 1948. As British colonial rule in the region progressed, Palestinian Arabs began to assert a distinct national identity, particularly in response to Zionist immigration and the establishment of Jewish settlements in Palestine. The Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939, aimed at opposing British and Zionist policies, further solidified Palestinian national consciousness and identity. By the mid-20th century, the term Palestine had become closely associated with the aspirations of Palestinian Arabs for self-determination and statehood. Despite divisions among Palestinians regarding the exact nature of their national identity and political goals, the concept of Palestine as a national entity had taken root, shaping the trajectory of Palestinian nationalism and the struggle for independence. Driven by factors such as Zionist immigration campaigns and waves of Jewish refugees fleeing persecution in Europe, the Jewish population in Palestine increased significantly from around 56,000 year 1919 to 650,000 by the year 1948. Still significantly smaller than the Arab-Palestinian population, which was around 1.2 million. Due to the rapid growth of the Jewish population in Palestine and escalating tensions between Jewish and Arab communities, the United Nations initiated the Partition Plan for Palestine, adopted on November 29, 1947. The UN Partition Plan for Palestine proposed a Jewish state on 56% of the land and an Arab state on 43%, with Jerusalem and Bethlehem under international administration due to their religious significance. It included an economic union between the states, protected citizenship and property rights for residents and minorities, and mandated the end of the British Mandate by August 1, with both states established by October 1, 1948, overseen by a UN commission. The Arab rejection of the Partition Plan and the subsequent declaration of independence by the State of Israel on May 14, 1948, led to the outbreak of hostilities between the newly declared State of Israel and its Arab neighbors. Thus, the Israeli War of Independence began. Israelis, through military victories, expanded their borders and invaded the land, even further gaining control over 78% of mandatory Palestine. Similarly, in the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel captured the Sinai Peninsula, Gaza Strip, West Bank, and Golan Heights, gaining control of 100% of the territories of Palestine. These events led to significant displacements of Palestinian populations throughout the region. Palestine was declared a state on November 15, 1988, during a meeting of the Palestine National Council in Algiers, Algeria. The Palestinian Liberation Organization proclaimed sovereignty over territories occupied by Israel since 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. Although the declaration of the Palestinian state was initiated in 1988, significant territorial control was not achieved until later years. The Gaza Strip came under Palestinian control in 1994, following the signing of the Gaza-Jericho Agreement. In the mid-1990s, administrative control over areas A and B of the West Bank was transferred to the Palestinian Authority through various interim agreements. However, control over East Jerusalem remains contested and continues to be under Israeli sovereignty. Israel unilaterally withdrew its military and settlements from Gaza in 2005, ending its direct control over the territory. However, Israel maintains control over Gaza's borders, airspace, and territorial waters. Additionally, the Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, established since the Six-Day War, have expanded steadily over the years and continue to grow, despite international criticism and efforts to halt their expansion. Presently, Palestinians exercise varying degrees of control over approximately 23% of the land historically designated as Mandatory Palestine. As we reach the conclusion of this part of our videos on the complex and deeply emotional question of who has a legitimate claim over the land of Canaan, we hope to have provided you with a comprehensive overview of the dimensions of the three claims: the traditional claim, the ancestral claim, and the legal claim. In our next final video, we will analyze each claim individually. We'll look closely at the arguments presented by both Jews and Palestinians for each claim. By examining these three claims separately, we aim to present a clear winner on each claim. Ultimately, we will determine an overall winner based on our comprehensive analysis. Stay tuned and thank you for watching.